Is it just me, or does it feel like MW3 has already fallen off? There's a point every year where people get tired of the current COD and start moving on to the next thing. But this time, it feels different. Here we are, only 5 months after release and barely 3 seasons in, and it seems like everywhere you look, people have already grown tired of MW3. Player numbers are dropping, content creators are moving on, and general interest in the game is falling to new lows. But why? Why does MW3 already feel old? Well, because it is old. The maps, the modes, the operators, the gameplay mechanics. It all has an air of deja vu about it. And that's by design. Since this game's inception, it was marketed as not only a return to form for the series, but a time machine, bringing you back to the glory days. And what's wrong with that? That's exactly what the fan base wants, right? But in this video, I want to break down the unintended side effects of this practice and how this choice not only didn't do any of what Activision intended, but is actually responsible for killing not only MW3, but the AAA gaming industry in general over the last few years. This is how nostalgia is killing Call of Duty. Modern Warfare 3's reliance on nostalgia is obvious. I mean, the game launched with all map remakes after all. And while at first it can be fun and even surreal to play on Scrapyard again, or feel the haymaker in your operator's hands while returning to Horde Point or Gun Game, the shine wears off very quickly. And when it does, you're left with a game so hollow, it can't stand up on its own 2 feet. This isn't even MW3's fault, but more a product of a developing strategy that's been snowballing throughout the franchise for years. The strategy of relying on their past success to help sell a game with little to no substance. Remember the first time they brought Shipment back in Ghosts? The hype around it was insane, and it was special because people were asking for it for years. But then it came back again in World War II, 3 games later, and then in MW19, then Vanguard the next year, then MW22 immediately after that again. And now, with MW3, they didn't even bother changing up the look, they just clicked and dragged the same file between games. And before you know it, the map's completely drained of all its good sentiment to the point that frankly, I'm sick of it. But it's more than just Shipment that's seen this kind of decay. Let's go all the way back to the original MW2 for a second, where we saw the return of the classic COD 4 maps like Vacant and Crash, which were only 2 years old at this time. But because map remakes were a new concept for the series, they were received very well and nobody complained. But then fast forward to 2019, and they were still remaking those maps again, just with doors and updated lighting. Modern Warfare 22's nostalgia bait was Showdown and Strike. Vanguard had World at War's Dome and Castle from 2008. Cold War had a slew of Black Ops 2 remakes from 2012. And Modern Warfare 23, of course, infinitely launched with nothing but remakes from 2009. Are you noticing a pattern? The series is stuck in a loop, constantly rehashing the same content from a decade ago. Meanwhile, there's only been 3 maps in the last 3 years to get a remake: Shoot House, Das House, and the newly released Grow House, aka Sphere from Vanguard, versus all these maps remade from just 3 years alone: World at War, MW2, and BO1. In all fairness, those games had some banger maps, but if you continue to re-release the same exact ones year after year, it's gonna get stale. And once the nostalgia wears off, the game simply has nothing else to offer. Beyond just maps, this extends to weapons and modes. Re-releasing party games one at a time without much care put into them, like Infected, which now only has a single loadout, or Gun Game, which is abandoned the original progression ladder with seemingly random guns, killing its original flow. They've even made them all rotation based, where modes are added in for sometimes as little as a week, creating this sense of supply and demand, manipulating the experience even further. And of course, this isn't limited to just multiplayer. The entire reason for rebooting the Modern Warfare universe was to bait people in with nostalgia. Remember when Shepard betrayed you in the original? Here it is again, but watered down. Soap died in MW3 the first time, so I guess he had to die again in the second. Even in Black Ops Cold War, Mason and Woods are lazily thrown into the story just to act like cardboard cutouts of their characters to elicit quick positive reactions from Black Ops 1 and 2 fans. Warzone is even older than COD 4 was when it started getting remakes, so this year we saw the start of its remake cycle, with Urzikstan's launch trailer even catering heavily to those pandemic Warzone vibes. Then there's Fortune's Keep returning, followed closely, of course, by good old Rebirth. At this rate, I would expect Verdansk within the next year. Current CODs are built around just making you remember the older ones, but when memories fade, and eventually, that just won't be enough, these games will have to stand on their own merit, which unfortunately has also been decaying over time. Like I said, COD has been doing this for years, but what made MW3 the one that broke the camel's back is the lack of change from previous years. With weapon, operator, and map carry forward mixed with the same UI, it's almost identical to the previous game. Can you honestly look at this clip and tell me which game it's from? Now let's compare this to back in the day. Even though the maps might be the same, the games were different both visually and mechanically. There was a reason to play one game over the other because they were all different from one another. Why would someone ever willingly go back to MW22 when MW23 is the same guns, the same equipment, and same UI? And likewise, why would anyone who got their fill of COD in MW22 play MW23? For all intent and purposes, we've been playing the same game for 16 months now. No wonder players are getting burnt out. Since Warzone's takeover of the franchise in 2019, the core game has needed to remain stagnant to integrate properly. Nothing is truly new anymore, and it feels like the devs are handcuffed and not allowed to actually be creative. Every game needs a gunsmith and operators with paid bundles and the same field upgrades and progression system. The innovation that COD used to be able to make every few years has been stifled by these restrictions, and that compounds with the heavy use of nostalgia to make a game that was already stale before even releasing. It's all the same bones of the last 3 years, mixed with the same recycled maps, modes, and weapons as the meat. But it's bigger than Call of Duty. The entire AAA industry has been operating like this for years. Halo Infinite has been trying to chase the success of Halo 3 since release. Battlefield 2042's marketing campaign was based on recreating iconic moments from Battlefield 4's prime to appeal to nostalgia factor. The Last of Us just re-releases the same game every few years, and Skyrim has been doing the same thing for decades. Fortnite even recently had a season entirely based on bringing back retired features from its prime. While Call of Duty continues to sell well and people buy based off that marketing, daily player numbers are dropping year after year, meaning they don't stay in play. And eventually, that's going to lead to worse and worse sales as the casual player base catches on to the bait and switch. Meanwhile, games like Helldivers, Palworld, and Lethal Company are all setting record highs for the industry because it does one thing current AAA games just can't do. It helps you make memories, not chase them. Because let's be honest, you don't actually miss MW2. It was broken and unbalanced, with noob tubes running rampant outside and campers with shotgun secondaries wrecking havoc inside. The thing you miss is the feeling you had when clutching that round in Search. The feeling of getting your first MOAB, going all in on a wager match, staying up all night waiting for the next zombies map to drop at midnight and hunt those Easter eggs. These were new experiences. Fun, organic moments created by you and your friends just having a good time. And no amount of reruns will ever give you the same feeling. And that's why Call of Duty needs to focus on creating new things for new players to latch onto themselves, and maybe together we can create a new golden age of this franchise instead of continuing this cycle of cheap imitation. Thanks for watching. Leave a like. Let me know if you agree with me in the comments. We'll see you in the next one.